What is going on, guys? We are talking about water pumps. How do you know when your water pump in your vehicle has gone bad? First thing you need to determine is where is the water pump located. Now, if you're working on an American vehicle like this one that's got a V8, then a lot of times they're just going to be right up front. And that is what that big center pulley is. That is the water pump on this. The first and most common sign of a water pump leaking is going to be coolant leak, of course. I actually lay out cardboard in my garage. The cars get parked on top of it. Makes it really easy to figure out when we've got a leak. You can see it just sticks out. You can also tell that it's coolant. It's been wet over here. It's all evaporated up. That's one way I know it's coolant. If it was oil of some sort, whether that be transmission fluid or engine oil, it's going to leave a stain. This is pretty light. You can also just tell by touching it. You can smell it. Know that's antifreeze. Then you've got vehicles like this. This is a Nissan Altima. When we're talking about 4-cylinder engines, where the belt is over here on the side, usually the passenger side, water pump's going to be on that side, of course. Now this one is actually the one that's been leaking in the front garage. So if we look down here, this pulley right here is the water pump. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a lot of, you can tell it's been leaking. Got a lot of dirt and grime and everything stuck down there. Telltale sign, of course, that we've got a water pump issue. So here we have a water pump. This one's actually of a Nissan Altima. So most water pumps actually have what we call a weep hole in them, which is going to be just a little hole somewhere along the front of the water pump, right behind the pulley. What that does is when you have seals inside the water pump go bad, coolant basically seeps through there and drips out of that hole. That is the most common thing you're going to run into when we talk about water pump leaks. The next not so common way that they can leak is actually just where it mates onto the engine. Now, if you had a water pump replaced recently and you get a leak, there's a good chance it is where it mates to the engine. It just didn't get a good seal. You have some reason why coolant is leaking out this area. If you've got a vehicle that hasn't had a water pump replacement recently, then your leak is probably not coming from here. It could be, but that's a little more rare. The next failure, probably the second most common, is this rotates. So you've got bearings in here. The bearings will go bad, and basically the pump will start making noise. Could be a grinding noise, could be a squealing, kind of a high-pitched noise, just kind of depends. This specific pump is on the passenger side against the engine. Of course, you've got your belt here. Now, when you're trying to isolate a noise, bearing noise, we can always check right in here with a stethoscope to see which component is making that noise. If when you put it on the water pump itself, then you know that the bearing in the water pump's bad. Could be a pulley, could be an idler, could be an alternator. Anything that is spinning around could have a bearing issue. Now, when I say stethoscope, they actually sell these. They're pretty inexpensive, just mechanic stethoscope. So, of course, these go on your ears. Then what you're able to do is take the end of this while the engine's running. Now you gotta be really careful because you've got a moving belt and a spinning pulley here. But we can go around to each component, put this down firmly, and if that bearing on the inside is bad, it's gonna travel through this tube and you're gonna hear it. Go around to each component in the belt system to figure out where that noise is coming from. Now, if you don't have a stethoscope, another way you can do this with a long screwdriver. Same idea. Vehicle's on, running. We're going to carefully get this down, put it on the housing of the water pump firmly, hold like this and then put your ear right up against the top of your hand, and that will kind of isolate where that noise is coming from. And there are, of course, other things outside of this video that can go wrong with the water pump. These are just the common things that I have seen. So the final thing, I've only seen it once or twice, is that this is what moves the coolant inside the engine. Now, over time, these will deteriorate, and I've seen it where these are almost completely gone. So water pump's still there, it's not leaking, it's still spinning, but now you no longer have these fins to move the coolant. I often get asked, what would cause these to deteriorate? They're metal. Well, they're going to corrode away, they can rust. So your coolant has a lot of additives in it that keep metal components from rusting. There's anti-foam as well as anti-freeze. So the part of antifreeze that keeps it from freezing doesn't go bad. It's all the additives, all the things that protect the metals in the system. Once those additives are depleted, that's when you start to see issues like the impellers rusting away in a system. That can also lead to issues with radiators. You can actually get corrosion in your block, a lot of different things that can cause. So keep your coolant changed. Now, a lot of water pumps will be like this, where they run off the serpentine belt. Those are outside the engine. You will run into other vehicles, especially 4-cylinder, especially Asian vehicles, some European vehicles, a lot of different ones, where the water pump actually runs off the timing belt. Now, those pumps are going to be located behind the timing cover, and those are a lot more involved because you have to take the timing belt off. Once you do that, you might as well replace the timing belt, the water pump, anything else that's in there, because that's a pretty big job. If you're not familiar with what kind of water pump your car has or where it's located, you can always, jump on YouTube, look around, Google it, you can figure it out. You can even go to a local parts store and they can likely tell you. Then we can come from under the vehicle, see if we can find any leaks. On this one, right here, I can actually see that it's wet and you've got some coolant just setting on this cross member. If we come around to this side, you can see just how wet and nasty this is. That is right below the water pump. So this is the old pump out of that Nissan that was leaking. Now, like I said earlier, this one doesn't have an actual weep hole per se, like a lot of them do. But what I can tell is how dirty it is right there. Basically what was happening, it was leaking out the shaft and then running down the housing and then out of the vehicle onto the ground. This one also has a little bit of rust on there, not in bad condition. The bearing's really not bad. It was really just leaking, and that was the only problem with this one.